Listen up. That ring. I need it. Then I'll be loyal.
Warning, this episode is emotionally disturbing to cheaters.
I debated long and hard on whether to post this, but I could use the advice, so I decided to go for it. My girlfriend, who I'll call Wendy, and I are both 26 and have, or had, been a couple for the past 4.5 years. We met at the convention center while working a show there. Back then, we both had just started our first jobs out of college, and had recently moved to the area where we now live. We exchanged business cards and left it there. The Sunday after the show, I was thinking about her and decided to send her a text, asking if she'd like to go for a drink sometime. She got back to me right away and said she did, and asked what day I had in mind. I asked if I could call her to discuss and she replied, "Sure." I called and we talked for over 90 minutes. We had so many things in common. We just kept talking and talking. I knew from that conversation, something big was going to happen between us. We set a date for Wednesday evening at a place near her apartment. Though we live in the same general area, our places are a good 35 minutes apart, so I decided to be a gentleman and drive to her. The first date was just for drinks, but we ended up hitting it off so well, we stayed for dinner and didn't end up leaving until near closing time. Nothing happened between us that night, but I knew the next time, sparks were going to fly and I was prepared and looking forward to it. 3 days later, we again met for dinner, but this time after dinner, I ended up staying the night at her place. In fact, I ended up staying all the way until late Sunday evening before heading home. I didn't want to leave, but I had to work the next day. The only thing I'll say is that I left there totally exhausted and completely out of ammunition. If you know what I mean. After that, we officially became a couple. Our physical chemistry has always been incredible. At least, it was for me. We've always gotten along really well. Genuinely enjoyed each other and we never argued. That is until recently. Though. After 4.5 years of being in what I thought was the relationship, I felt the time was right to propose. She and I had talked about marriage numerous times, and both agreed we wanted to get married to each other at some point. So I thought this would be a layup. The timing couldn't be better. I knew she wouldn't like too many eyes on her, therefore I didn't plan to make a scene. Let's say special, but still private. So I made reservations at one of her favorite places, and after dinner we ordered coffees and a dessert. It was at that time I brought out the ring box and handed it to her. She asked me what it was, and I told her, "I think you know." She opened the box and I could tell by her eyes. She was shocked. I thought she was shocked by the large size of the rock, as I had really splurged. But no, I was wrong. She was shocked, but not because of the rock. What she did next started the spiral that would eventually end our relationship. She looked up at me and said,
I'm not ready for this. No, we are not ready for this.
She then closed the box and handed it back to me. I wasn't expecting that reaction out of her. I wasn't prepared for that. So I struggled for words. She could see my disappointment and quickly started saying she wants to marry me someday. But now just wasn't the right time. Not the right time for both of us. Seeing I wasn't taking it well, she came to my side of the table and started kissing on me, telling me how much she loved me, saying marriage wasn't necessary right now for us to love each other. She said something like, "We should just enjoy things as they are, as our relationship has been so good." Her words did nothing to lift me, and I remained mostly quiet. We finished up with our food and then went back to her place. I stayed quiet on the drive back, and she was trying to get me to talk. I wasn't mad or giving her the silent treatment as punishment. It's just, I was still processing everything. When we got back to her place, she was all over me. I told her I wasn't feeling it, but she persisted and removed all her clothes, and then starting undressing me. I resisted at first, but then she started doing things I couldn't resist, so I just went with it. I thought to myself, at least it will take the edge off after what just happened, but I didn't do anything back. It was a good night, but I was still reeling from being rejected. When you ask someone to marry, it's serious, real. What now? I needed to think. I wanted to get away to give myself space and time. It was Saturday and she planned on us spending the day together, but I told her I needed some alone time and was going to leave. She was upset, didn't want me to go, but I told her I had to and she finally let me go. I went straight home and sat around, trying to figure out how I got things so wrong. She called me at least a half dozen times to check in, asking if I was okay, if we were okay or if I needed anything. I sensed she was concerned about how I was handling things. To be truthful, I wasn't happy. While it was nice getting the attention from her, something had changed in our relationship. I didn't feel the same about her now. First time that I began having doubts myself, and starting thinking, she might not be the one. She came over to my place on Sunday and we immediately had sex, then hung by the pool for the rest of the day. Things seemed normal, but it all felt awkward. The following week, she called me every day at work to check in. She was worried I was disconnecting. Honestly, she should have been, because I unknowingly was. On Friday, she came over to my place and we planned to spend the weekend together. We met up with some friends that night and had a good time. On Saturday, we spent the morning at the pool, then went out to a sports bar to watch the baseball game. When we got back, we cozied up, got ready to chill on the couch while discussing what we were going to watch on Netflix. Out of nowhere, she got up in my face, kissed me hard, and said,
Yes, yes, baby.
I knew what she meant, but I asked her what she was talking about. She replied,
Yes, I'll marry you.
Oof. I wasn't expecting that. Looking back now, maybe I should have told her yes, and went with it, but I didn't. Instead, I told her I'd been thinking about us, and came to the same conclusion she did last week. The time wasn't right and we should wait a while longer. I expected she would take it like I did and we would have a civil conversation. Oh no. I was blindsided when we had a huge blowout. She asked why I changed my mind. I again told her I agreed with her initial response, and feel it best if we kept things as they are for now. She told me,
Jesus, you're holding it against me because I took time to think about the biggest decision of my life.
I told her she didn't tell me she had to think about it last week. She was clear. She told me, in no uncertain word, no. And now I'm agreeing with her. We went round and round on this for a few minutes. And she started getting angry. At some point she started looking like she was fuming. Then she got up and walked outside. I got up to follow her thinking she just went out to get some air, but instead, she was already in her car. She gave me this disgusted look, then peeled off driving fast down the street. She'd never shown this ugly side of her before. I was stunned. It gave me a huge red alert notice. From everything that had happened, that disgusted look was something that really rubbed me the wrong way. I'll admit I was more than a little irritated by her reaction, and didn't call or text her the rest of the night, nor did she contact me. On Sunday, I was thinking about calling her, but thought, let's see how long she can go without calling me. And maybe a cooling off period would be good for both of us. When I didn't hear from her by 6, I called and left her a message. Then followed that up with a text around 9 Sunday evening. She finally called me back around 10:30, and we ended up talking until after midnight. On the call we decided, or should I say she decided, we needed some time apart to recalibrate our relationship. I went along with it, but it made me feel uneasy and I started questioning things between us even more. We spent the next week apart. However, Wendy was calling me at least once a day. On every call, she'd tell me how much she missed and loved me, but didn't seem in any hurry to end our little separation. The ball is in her court now. I decided I wouldn't be begging about restarting anything. She had too. Even so, I thought things were okay, and we'd be back to normal in no time. This brings me to the day before yesterday, when out of nowhere, I received a text from one of Wendy's friends who I'll call Deborah. She said she needed to tell me something, and wanted to see if I had time for a call. She'd never called me before, so I called her right back thinking it was some kind of an emergency. When she answered, she said she had something personal to tell me and wanted to do it in person. I asked if she could give me a clue, and she said she'd rather wait until we met. Eye to eye. I couldn't wait to hear what she had to tell me, so I agreed to meet her that night at a local bar. When we met, she told me for the past week, Wendy has been seeing a guy she met through work, who I will call Randy. He works for a company that has some connection to Wendy's company, and he recently got divorced. According to Deborah, he had been hitting on Wendy for months, and she finally went out with him that Saturday. When she left my place, I told Deborah that Wendy and I had a big argument that night, and she left my place in a huff. Deborah said she knew, because Wendy told their friend group about it. According to Deborah, after leaving my place, Wendy met up with this Randy somewhere, and then ended up spending the entire weekend with him. The entire weekend. This explained why Wendy didn't call me until late Sunday evening, and why she requested time apart. I was pissed and knew our relationship was over, as there was no coming back from this. Deborah told me she knows this will end her friendship with Wendy, but she didn't care, as she couldn't live with herself knowing I was being played this way. She also told me Wendy's other friends knew this too, even about details, and warned me to be careful talking with them. I believe Deborah because she is an honest person, and the only one out of Wendy's friend group that seemed decent. Deborah said she was appalled by Wendy's choices, and she hasn't spoken to her since finding this out. She told me she wasn't going to say anything to Wendy until after I did whatever I was going to do about the situation. I thanked her and told her I'd let her know, and we parted ways. I of course was really upset by all this, and spent the rest of the night feeling an incredible sense of anger and loss. Yesterday at work, Wendy called me 3 times and left messages, but I didn't respond. I wanted to wait until I got home, alone, to talk to her, as I planned to break up with her over the phone. I was seething at that point, and didn't want to be anywhere near her. On my way home, I was playing scenarios through in my head and knew the first thing she'd do after I did that was come straight over to my place. So to prevent a confrontation, I went home and packed an overnight bag, and got a room at a hotel near my office. I ended up calling her around 7. When she answered, she asked where I was, and why I hadn't called her back today. I was fuming at that point and didn't waste time with small talk. I told her I knew she had been cheating on me with Randy. She went completely silent, but I could hear her breathing heavily. When she didn't say anything, I told her we were done, and hung up on her. An hour later, she called and left me a message saying she was at my apartment, asking where I was. She called back again 15 minutes later, stating she was inside now and was going to stay there until I came home. All night, she kept calling and texting, crying and saying she could explain everything, and that her relationship with this Randy wasn't what I thought. That's where things are between us as I type this. I'm glad it's over, but I just realized the huge void I now have in my life. I really loved her. I keep thinking, did I do the right thing? Did I give up too soon? I know I can't, but the thought, can a couple come back from this? I can't. I still love her and really can't imagine life without her, but I also can't imagine being with her after what she did. I feel lost in the fog.
What would you call a person who is a liar, a cheater, and is mentally abusive? I would call that person hazardous waste, and wouldn't want to be anywhere near them. What she showed you most recently is who she really is. Do you want to go through life sleeping with one eye open, wondering if she's off again screwing Randy, or some other Chad she storms off to when you have an argument? Cut her loose and don't look back. After a few months, you won't even miss her.
At a minimum, I think you owe to yourself and to her to have a sit-down discussion and get all your feelings on the table. She obviously cares deeply for you, and deep down I can tell, you really don't want to lose her. My husband and I went through something like this. Although I didn't do anything with the guy in my case, I just wanted to go out with another man before I got married, to make sure I was making the right decision. I was, and I did, and we've been married for 19 years now. I hope you and Wendy can work through this.
Why are guys so uptight about the physical act of intimacy and taking ownership of their partner's bodies? Yes, it's important, but not as important as the bond you have with your true partner. I've been married to my husband for 36 years, and we both cheated on each other early in our marriage. We stayed together because we loved each other, and eventually got into polyamory. Eventually that fizzled out for us, and we've been monogamous for the last 17 years, and plan to stay that way forever. I can't imagine life without him, and I know he feels the same. Don't let your emotions ruin your life.
Take it from me, breaking up with her was the right thing. My first wife cheated on me a few years into our marriage. She was remorseful, and I decided to forgive her. Even if you're weak like I was, you can't really forgive. as I never really did. It's something inside you, biological or physical, but it knows and will always be disgusted. We stayed together for another 4 years. I was miserable every day, even though she was doing everything right. Eventually, I ended things and it was very hard on her, but I felt like a new man. All the burdens were gone, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest. I'm remarried 8 years now and happier than ever. Life does go on, my friend. Don't give in to the weakness. Let go and let yourself be free and happier.
Royal AI.
Here I'm back with an update. 7 weeks have passed. Against the advice most of you gave, I decided to meet with Wendy to hear her side of the story. I wanted to see what she'd say, and if she'd be honest with me. We met 3 days after my first post, at a park where we used to take walks. We sat at a picnic table in one of the pavilions, far enough away from other people to have privacy, but within view of others so things wouldn't get out of hand. I arrived 15 minutes late, and she was already sitting at the bench waiting for me. I could see she was nervous when she got up to hug me. I hugged her, but not like I used to. More like the kind of hug you give a distant cousin who you haven't seen in a few years. She right away went into saying she was so sorry and didn't mean it. She said her relationship with Randy wasn't what it appeared, and they only started talking after we were having trouble. After she turned down my proposal. That's funny, I didn't know we were having problems. I then told her to tell me the truth about her relationship with him. She said it was just a friendship, and they relied on each other during difficult times. I asked her how long she'd been speaking to him, and she said they met through work last year and had talked several times throughout the year. And their friendship grew when he started going through his divorce. She said she never told me about him because she didn't think it was a big deal. He was just another someone she dealt with at work. I then asked when did their friendship become more. She said after he got divorced. He confided in her one day when they were talking on the phone. She said they had a good conversation and that's what made her call him. After I took back my marriage proposal, I asked how far she had taken things with him. She said,
Ugh, nothing if you're asking about whether I had sex with him.
She then asked how I even knew about him. I lied, and told her I followed her that night when she left my apartment, and saw her go into his place. When she heard this, her facial expression completely changed and I could see she was getting uncomfortable. I told her I sat outside his place and waited for you to come out, but you never did. I said I went home and then came back the next morning and your car was still there. By this time the tears were flowing, and she was looking away from me, rubbing her hands together. I told her why lie? Why not just tell me the truth? She said,
Oh, you know why. I didn't want to lose you.
Heavily crying now, she told me they only did mouth action with each other. Well, in other words, this is what she really said.
No, we didn't do any real pumping. I only went hawk to like a couple of times here and there.
I didn't even bother to answer and just shook my head with disgust. She told me how sorry she was and that she had cut all contact with Randy, and will quit her job if I want her to. I told her there was no chance for us ever being a couple after what she did, and the only reason I met with her is so we could both have closure. She continued trying to change my mind, saying we could start over or we could start the family we always talked about. Once she said that, I had heard enough and got up to leave. She got up and begged me to stay. I refused, but did give her one last hug and wished her well before I turned and walked away, leaving her sitting there alone and crying. She sent me a text later that evening thanking me for meeting with her and asking if we could still be friends. My answer to that is no, but I didn't even bother to respond as I was still spinning after finding out the details. The following day I called Deborah to again thank her for alerting me to what was going on and to tell her how I left things with Wendy. I told her that Wendy doesn't know she told me, because I told Wendy I followed her to Randy's place. Talking to Deborah was very soothing and we ended up staying on the phone for over an hour. Before ending the call, she suggested we should get a coffee sometime and we met up that Saturday. We really hit it off and have been dating ever since. I didn't tell Wendy about this, but Deborah did, and that ended their friendship. Deborah said she doesn't care as she had already written Wendy off. Wendy has since tried reaching out to me a couple times, but I haven't responded and don't plan to. I'm taking things slow with Deborah, but I can already see the difference between her and Wendy. Deborah is a high-quality person unlike Wendy, who turned out to be nothing more than common table scraps. Before signing off, I want to thank everyone who responded. Your comments helped me work through this difficult time, and I really appreciate it.
That brings us to the end of this story so far. You like Reddit stories presented in this format? Be sure to come over. You are welcome to join us at Royal A.I. What would you advise, OP? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to smack the like button, and if you have a story you're willing to share, email it to contactroyalai@gmail.com. See you in the next one.